Friends, welcome back. Another big episode of Bleav in Big Ten off and running as we get you set for the college football playoff semifinal. Sure, we're used to 4 teams battling it out for the national title, but this all started with 12, and now we're down to 4, and the Big Ten has 50% of the action. And excited to be here with you to talk about Notre Dame, Penn State, and Texas and Ohio State. I am Rhett Lewis. That is Tom Hannifan from the State of State show, a Penn State football show, and obviously a lot going on in your world on that front these days, Tom. And as a Penn State alum, I can only imagine the great pride you are feeling at this moment. This is uncharted territory here, getting into a semifinal situation, and it's awesome to see. And I know we're going to dig into that game, but we got a lot going on in this episode as well, my friend.
Yeah, let's get to some business here. Bleav in Big Ten is presented by BetOnline. BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting in 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion with the largest selection of odds on everything from football to the NBA, college basketball to the NHL and UFC. BetOnline is the number one sports betting source for the new year. From touchdowns to three-pointers and hat tricks, BetOnline has you covered on every game, every play, and every win. Bleav in Big Ten is presented by BetOnline. The game starts here.
Yes, it does. And for us, I kind of want to get, a little picture now that we've had 2 rounds in the books of what this has looked like as this new 12-team format of the college football playoff. And I have some thoughts on it, kind of getting beyond the selection process, but kind of just seeing now as how it's all played out, Tom. What stands out to you about this year and this format?
Every team that's in the Final Four earned it on the field. And wasn't that the whole point of this 12-team college football playoff, getting away from the days of the BCS where a computer just determined 2 teams, getting away from the 14 playoff where it felt like very worthy teams were potentially getting snubbed or even blowouts in the first round or juggernauts or something like that. The combination of NIL and the transfer portal has created so much parity in the sport that you do have this wealth being dispersed amongst all these FBS teams. So yes, while we all were up in arms and had our pitchforks out in the first round of all these blowouts and, this team doesn't deserve to be here, this team doesn't deserve to be here, who's the best, who's credible, all that crap. Well, every team that's in here in the Final Four deserves to be here, earned the right to be here. And I find it so interesting that no conference champion is still around. No team that had our first round bye is still around. I sincerely hope that the seeding is revisited for 2025, 2026, because there's teams like Arizona State and Boise State that was like, hey, do these teams really have an advantage of getting a first round bye? And then it was like Oregon, we thought was going to be fine against Ohio State. They get smoked. They had a first round bye. So I don't want to put too much emphasis on the byes, but it should be a situation where the seeding is revisited and we come up with a better way of evaluating these teams, because wins matter. What you do on the field matters. What you do against your strength of schedule matters. But I think it needs to be tweaked considerably.
Yeah, I get that. I also, am a little hesitant to just say, hey, we've got one season and let's, rip it up and redo it after 1 year, right? And I do think you need to get some sample size to really get a grasp of it. This 1 year, might paint that picture, but, maybe next year wouldn't. So I'm a little hesitant to go like, all right, we got to completely redo this thing. Tweak, maybe, sure. I could see it, a couple little things there, but this is, I think the one overriding thing that has come out of the first 2 rounds is Ohio State is the best team in college football right now.
Agreed.
And they would not be in the college football playoff if not for the 12-team format. Like, that to me is the biggest proponent and the biggest promoter of what we have seen this year. We would not be getting this Ohio State Buckeyes football team. And sure, if it was still a 4-team playoff, that would have been their fault. Fine. But now that we have allowed ourselves to put 12 teams in and to give them the opportunity to go out and prove it on the field, that's exactly what we've seen, as you pointed out. And now Ohio State, as a team outside of the top 4, not a conference champion, has a chance to go win a national title. A damn good chance. And so I think that part to me sticks out, kind of vehemently. I think if you're a team that's out there and looking at like, okay, yeah, the bye, we got, if you're out here lamenting the fact that you got a bye, like, come on, we fight to the
Right.
death for a single bye in each conference in the NFL. Like everybody in the tournament would love to have a bye. So like, let's kind of put the brakes on that. It's up to you and your team and your program to figure out how to best use it.
Well, let me ask you this counterpoint. Would Ohio State be in the playoff if it weren't for expanded to 12? Would Penn State be in the playoff? Would Texas be in the playoff had it not been expanded to 12? Would Notre Dame not playing in a conference? James Franklin has raised that point. So many other people have raised that point.
Yeah.
Would any of the teams that we know are the best teams in the country playing in the Final Four even be in the playoff? It had not been expanded to 12.
None of these teams.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, really, I mean,
like your argument,
go back and relitigate the top four again, but for sure, you'd have had Oregon and Georgia as conference champions, and then like what happens outside of the next two would have been interesting. But at this point, this is why we did 12. This is why we got it out there, because it allowed a team like Ohio State the opportunity to go out there and prove their talent. And I love that part of it. And that part of it makes me excited about the future for the CFP. The near-term future, though, Tom Hannifan, has two really fun games on the docket for us, hoping that the snow and winter I don't want to say Wonderland, because I'm sure there's some misery involved down in the South and in Texas, where the Cotton Bowl is going to feature Ohio State and Texas. But hopefully everybody gets in safely and is able to get this game off and running, and see what we have in store here, because this has the potential to be another really good one. I think it also has the potential, Tom, to be a blowout in the way that Ohio State took care of business against Oregon. I don't know that Texas is head and shoulders more talented than Oregon was. And so seeing where Ohio State was able to dispatch of Oregon that way, I'm really curious about it. And the way that we're going to do this for you, as we've done in the last couple of weeks, is we're going to lay out a star that needs to shine in order for that team to win. Obviously, looking at this from the Big Ten perspective, we're going to look at a matchup that we feel like might dictate where this game goes. And then we're going to look at an X factor, a player maybe a little bit more under the radar that might have a big impact in this game. And with that, Tom, I will turn it over to you for Texas and Ohio State, and for Ohio State in particular, a star that needs to shine for the Buckeyes to keep this magical run rolling.
I think it has to be Will Howard, in that he has been very consistent. I've said that he is the best quarterback going right now in the college football playoff, and you can argue most talented, most productive. Is he an NFL talent? All that stuff. He's the best person playing the position of quarterback in the country right now. Will Howard, as long as he continues this momentum that he's been on, is going to have a lot of success. It's going to be critical for Ohio State to pick up where they left off in terms of scoring against Oregon, and that I don't feel like Texas is going to be able to keep up in that, but the most difficult matchup in this game is going to be that fantastic Ohio State offense against what is a very strong physical Texas defense. I think that's Texas's best chance to stay in the game. So if Texas can make him uncomfortable and ultimately limit time of possession for Ohio State, limit possessions for the Buckeyes, that's going to be the best chance for them. And that starts with Will Howard, and that's doing it with his arm and with his legs. And I sincerely hope to see Chip Kelly and company stick to the passing game. It had so much success, obviously, against Oregon. They kind of had the light bulb go off after that Michigan loss of, hey, we're not a run-first team. Let's throw the dang ball. Let's get it to Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, Emeka Egbuka. Let's do all the things that just make sense and let our athletes be stars.
And that's a great piece of it. I had a chance to talk to Chip Kelly afterwards, and you really got the sense that they felt so confident about the game plan and the way that this team has kind of morphed since that Michigan game. And he was confident in where they were going in, and definitely confident in how he felt about this team coming out, because the stars played like stars. Like, that was a question that I asked him, and he was like, "That's how you win football games at this level, when you're this deep into it, fighting for a national title. Like, everybody steps up and plays to the level they're capable of." And that is what we saw from JT Tuimoloau. JT was on fire in that game against Oregon. A couple of sacks, 2 of the 8 sacks. In fact, he didn't even realize how many sacks they had when I talked to him at the Rose Bowl on the field after the win. He was like, dang, 8 sacks? Really? Like, yeah, man. And Oregon hadn't given up but 12, going into the game. So it was a pretty incredible performance. So for me, the star that needs to shine here in this one is JT Tuimoloau. And what can he do against Kelvin Banks? What can he do against Trevor Gooseby and the tackles of Texas? Because I think if you cause Quinn Ewers to get sped up, if you cause Quinn Ewers to get rid of the ball before he needs to, or before he can, before guys present themselves as open to him, I think that you're going to find yourself in a similar situation if you're Ohio State, and with an opportunity then to get the offense back out onto the field a number of times. So to me, JT Tuimoloau, because I do think he's their best pass rusher. He is, he's not a he's not a Nick Bosa where he can really bend and has that incredible burst off the edge, but he's heavy-handed, physical. He and Jack Sawyer are similar, but I think he brings a little bit more twitch and a little bit more athleticism to it. And so I think he's kind of the best package of a pass rusher that they have. And I think, kind of all 4 of those guys up front, rolling together, but with JT leading the way, I think is an opportunity for Ohio State to win that game. So he is the star that needs to shine for me. How about a matchup? Is it a position group? Is it a one-on-one that you think could really make a difference in this game, Tom?
I think you just touched on it, and that it's going to be Texas's offensive tackles against Ohio State's defensive ends. And even to that point, it's how does Quinn Ewers handle that? How does Steve Sarkisian call the game? What types of protection do they try and dial up? Because a lot of credit to Ohio State and Jim Knowles, the way that this defense has played throughout the season, but especially in that game against Oregon. They really took it to another level, and that's been the element of what Ryan Day has tried to instill this season is like, we're going to be more physical. It's like, yep, that's showing up on one side of the ball, and that's okay. You guys have a markedly better defense than you did the year before and the year prior, incremental growth. Can Texas's tackles hang on against the Buckeyes defensive ends? What type of protection are you going to dial up for Quinn Ewers? And for Quinn, there's peaks and valleys. We saw some of those peaks against Arizona State, and the valleys are him against Georgia earlier on in the season where he looked like a deer in headlights. Which version are you going to get? That's my issue seeing all these dollar amounts thrown out there for Quinn Ewers, is that he can be great, but there's inconsistency.
Yeah, no doubt. And I saw it firsthand. I saw him in person this summer at the Manning Passing Academy, and I came out of that trip down to Thibodaux, Louisiana, being like, Quinn Ewers is QB1 in college football this year because of his release, because of his accuracy, because of his ability to make really difficult throws and tight window throws, but just haven't seen it enough on a consistent basis, I think, for Quinn this year. And I know the injuries have probably played a role in that, but Ryan Day said he offered him as an 8th grader at Ohio State. Remember, we got this part of the matchup too. Quinn Ewers began his collegiate journey as like a 17-year-old in Columbus at Ohio State, a very well compensated one by some reports, right? Foregoed his senior year of high school and went up to Ohio State early. And he was out there and, never really played a snap there in Columbus, but transferred down to Texas and has now done really well for himself. But that's a part of the matchup too, and that piece of it, that's kind of a fun little background story to think about. But yeah, Ryan Day was like, he's the only 8th grader I've ever offered, or the first 8th grader I've offered, and it was because he was at our camp and had an incredible release. On the flip side, for me, the matchup to watch is how Texas decides to deal with Jeremiah Smith. Do you feel comfortable enough moving Jahdae Barron around and having him, travel? We didn't really see that with Oregon. I thought maybe Jabbar Muhammad might do that with the Ducks and might spend more time, on Jeremiah Smith when they could figure it out from a scheme perspective. We didn't see it. So that's something that I'll be watching. And, can Malik Muhammad stand up, and can Jalen Gilbo stand up? What about Andrew Mukuba, in the deep center, as a high safety, or Michael Taft? Like, that is where I think this game, could hinge, right? Is if they're allowing Jeremiah Smith to knock his head on the goalpost the way that he did against Oregon, it's going to be a long day for the Longhorns. So that's one matchup to watch there. How about a quick X factor from you there, Tom?
I think it comes back to the way Steve Sarkisian dials up this game from an offensive play calling standpoint. Is you're going to have pressure coming from Ohio State. How do you cope with it? And also, how quickly does Texas abandon the run game? Because it's just been anemic most of the season. It wasn't good against Arizona State. The Arizona State win really did not instill a lot of confidence in me in terms of what this Texas team can be. I feel much stronger about their defense than I do about their offense, but Steve Sarkisian's got to come up with a lot of answers offensively. And if that's through explosives and bursts, fine, but you got to find a way to score and keep up with Ohio State.
Yeah, look, I agree with you. But the X factor in terms of player for me is Lathan Ransom. He's a guy that kind of gets overshadowed a lot because of Caleb Downs, right? Because Caleb Downs is, a first round pick waiting to happen as soon as he becomes draft eligible, which is not for another year. So Lathan Ransom to me is a guy who has put on tape everything you would want to see if you're an NFL team that's trying to evaluate a safety, right? He can go down, rotate down inside the box and make plays and be a physical tackler. He can be that post safety if you need him to be. He can cover tight ends. Like, he has had all of that in his repertoire, and I think he's going to need all of it to deal with this Texas offense and to make life a little bit more difficult for Quinn Ewers and this Texas offense. So to me, that is an X factor, Lathan Ransom. I would also, just as a bonus, his buddy Caleb Downs returning punts in special teams. That's something you got to pay attention to in a game like this, because a special teams touchdown could flip things, just like that in a game of this magnitude. Okay, Tom, let's switch gears and let's move to the other semifinal here. And it's going to be a good one. I think two very similarly constructed and kind of similar philosophically teams in Notre Dame and Penn State. And James Franklin kind of said as much. Like, you look at the stats that he always talks about, right? Turnover battle, middle eight, all those things that he mentions after every game. It's like, well, Notre Dame's really good in that stuff too. And so I'm kind of curious in this game, based off what we've seen in the playoffs thus far, and it looks like Abdul Carter is trending towards being available, by the way, if he is the star you choose, the star that needs to shine for the Nittany Lions to find themselves in a national title game.
It does have to be Abdul Carter, because I don't know exactly what his level of health is going to be. Is he 90%, 80%, 50%? Is he more of a hindrance to the defense? Is he a decoy for the defense? Do they use him in different ways? It looked like against Boise State when he was on the sideline, they were working on his left shoulder. So I don't have any inside information, but speculating, say it's a left shoulder injury. Do you line him up at his conventional defensive end spot against the left tackle, where that shoulder is going to be constantly dealing with impact? Do you move him to the opposite side to go up against the right tackle, where you can protect that wing, but does it limit him in terms of his moves he's able to do? Or a lot of speculation amongst Penn State media experts is, do you see Abdul Carter utilized more in his old linebacker spot, more as a spy on Riley Leonard? I think there's a lot of linebackers Penn State could use to spy Riley Leonard. I think Leonard warrants a spy in this game because of the way that he affects Notre Dame, elongating plays, even rushing the football conventionally and spontaneously when a play breaks down. That could be Abdul Carter. It could be Kobe King, Tony Rojas, Dom DeLuca. But if Abdul Carter is in a situation where less impact is better, having him spy Riley Leonard, that's why you pay attention to number 11.
Like that. And that's the versatility of his skill set. Like, that's what makes him special. That's what makes him, a no-brainer first round pick when that time comes. And the time is coming very soon. So I do expect Tom Allen, though. Now, I will say, like, it's not like, now they can put in a package, but it's not like they've had a month, to prepare here for Texas. And so I don't know, like, how crazy you can get, and moving him around. I know he has moved around a little bit, but he's been predominantly down there on the edge in that bull roll, kind of being that guy to get after the passer. So can you move him from side to side to maybe alleviate some of the issues? Sure, if that is a part of what's bothering him. So they'll get creative as much as they can, but you don't want to take yourself out of the structure of what you've done just to compensate for one player, even though he is a tremendous player. To me, the star that needs to shine, though, for the Penn State Nittany Lions is one that has been shining brightly throughout the playoff, and that is Katron Allen. Katron Allen, it's 134 yards. He was the running back of note in a game in which he played against the Heisman Trophy finalist in Ashton Genty. His 134, Nick Singleton's 87 were massive in that game. And I think that is the way that Penn State needs to win. I'd certainly like to see, Drew Aller a little bit more above, 50% completion than, in passing. But there were some other circumstances with that, and he had some really big time throws in it. But to me, Katron Allen is the straw that needs to stir the drink here for Penn State offensively. He is the star to me that needs to find a way to shine. And let's not abandon things if things don't go your way early in the run game, because Notre Dame is stiff up there, even without, Miles. And I think that they can find a way to be successful in the run game. And I think that Katron Allen is the one to do it there. So that's the star for me. How about the matchup you're watching in this game with your Nittany Lions and the Fighting Irish?
The matchup is the interior of Penn State's offensive line against the interior of Notre Dame's defensive line and defense as a whole. As you just mentioned, Riley Mills getting injured in the game against Indiana, lost for the season. There is a notable, no worries. There's a notable lack of size there for Notre Dame. And listen, they held up against Georgia. Georgia has an enormous offensive line, but I wouldn't describe that as the most talented offensive line in the country. And Georgia clearly struggled to run the football all season long. So it's kind of hard to point to that game and be like, well, look at what Notre Dame did against them. It's one of many data points for Georgia. I think if Penn State plays some bully ball in the center of the offensive line, that's where they're going to have the most success. To all the points you just said about the way Katron Allen and Nick Singleton are running the football, you've got beef in terms of depth at offensive line. We've seen freshman offensive lineman Cooper Cousins flexed to fullback. There's about 3 or 4 tight ends Penn State could trot out there. Play some big boy ball, play some vanilla football, some leather helmet football, and beat up Notre Dame for 4 quarters, because time of possession, field position, and turnovers are going to decide this whole thing.
Yeah, I don't think I disagree with you on that either. And, that goes back to the run game too, right? That interior, like how can you pound it? How can you find ways to create seams, for Allen and Singleton to make some hay in that part of the game? And I think that will be a big piece of it. The matchup to watch for me is maybe one that's, maybe not talked about a bunch when you talk about Notre Dame, but it's how do you deal with Jordan Faison, wide receiver who is not like, a Jeremiah Smith caliber. Not many people are, but he is a guy that makes big time plays. I watched it in the Indiana game. He made some incredible catches in that game that moved the sticks for them, that kept them on the field. He made a big play down the field as well. He's capable of that. And so how does Penn State find a way to, not let him make those plays when Notre Dame really needs it? Like on a 3rd and 7, can you keep Jordan Faison from getting to the sticks and extending a drive? And, is that Kalen Kimber? Is that AJ Harris? Is that the safeties kind of coming down and putting the clamps on everything in the middle of the field where he can operate very well? So that's something that I'll be watching as a matchup that could dictate how things go. Quickly on X factors, what do you got here for Penn State?
I think this is really easy. The X factor is which head coach makes better in-game decisions if this is a one-possession game late. We've seen how Marcus Freeman made a great decision against Georgia to swap the teams out there, special teams, offense, and really mess up Georgia. He's been a head coach now for 3 seasons, so you have less data points. It's been a struggle for James Franklin for 10 years at Penn State, but it's been better this year in terms of making those critical decisions that don't shoot you in the foot in a game of this magnitude. That's been the knock on James Franklin. So to me, the X factor is which coach makes the right decision at the right time and which team has less mistakes.
I'm going to go with a player, and I'm going to say it's Kobe King. And at the middle linebacker spot for Tom Allen's defense, again, finding a way to keep Riley Leonard from extending plays and, dominating a game on the ground with his legs. I think that's something to watch for sure. He's not a guy we talk about a ton, than Dennis Sutton and Abdul Carter rightfully get a lot of that praise, but Kobe King is a guy to watch in this one.
Agreed.
And that's going to do it for this episode of Bleav in Big Ten. Appreciate you guys being with us. Invite you to join us on YouTube, get into the comments section, join the conversation that way. We look forward to seeing what you guys have to say about this game as well. Be sure to check out Tom on the State of State show. A lot of great content leading up to the semifinal matchup. For Tom Hannifan, I'm Rhett Lewis. Thanks so much for being with us. We'll catch you next time after the semifinals.